Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Christmas Eve service, our time together. I hope you're enjoying your time with your families, and I'm here with the ministry leadership team and the teaching team, and we're going to begin our time together with some worship. this last song, I'm going to sing a song called Labor of Love as we focus on the theme of love for this week of Advent, and particularly on the story of Mary and what she sacrificed and what she gave in order to be part of this story of our salvation coming into the world. I thought this would be a good song to meditate on. It's written by Andrew Peterson.
kids? Oh, I hope I'm not too close to the camera. Was that scary? Maybe you were spacing out while your parents are watching this video. Well, we're going to have some fun. I have a homework assignment for you, my kids, believe it or not. Yes, even on Christmas Eve, I'm giving you homework. I've got to find it real quick. Okay, here it is. So, I want you to go right now and find a blank piece of paper. Oh, that's not blank. Okay, well, this side is almost blank. But find a blank piece of paper, and what I want you to do, well, I'll give you a second to do that. Go ahead. Get a blank piece of paper. Yes. Okay. You got it. I want you to draw the nativity. Okay? You can use markers or crayons or pencils or whatever it is you like to use that your parents approve of. And I want you to draw the nativity scene. What do you remember and who is there? Okay? So it's very important for us. We see this all the time, nativity sets, or you see an ornament or a decoration. You've probably passed by it a lot of times. But this scene, I think it's really important to focus on who is there and what it's trying to tell us. So, I would love for you right now to make an art project, and feel free to share it. Parents, if you want to upload it to our Instagram, tag us or something, and we'll repost it or something. That'll be fun. But what you can do is draw your nativity scene, and then parents, you can actually ask them if they're missing anybody. So this is a good occasion for us parents to get together with our kids. I actually previewed this homework assignment with my daughter, and this is the version she drew. But I would love for you to see who's at the nativity. Are there animals? Are there people? Are there non-human things that are there as well that might be important, like a star or something like that? I'll give you some clues. But every piece of that scene is beautiful, marvelous, and important, and conveying something. And I'll go ahead and give you a little bit of spoiler. What you look at when you see that scene is something that it's one of the names that we know Jesus by, which is Emmanuel, which means, anybody know it? God with us. So when you draw that scene, I want you to think about that message. What does this convey about God wanting to be with us? So I hope you have fun with that. And hang it on your fridge, or I don't know, put a hole through it, put it on your tree. Have fun with it. Thank you for celebrating Christmas with us, and we're happy to do that together. So let's be family and decorate our figurative refrigerator together. All right, Godspeed.
Thank you, Ethan, for our kids moment today, and thank you to Amanda as well for leading us in worship. I love that last song. Those were some powerful lyrics. Hello, everybody. Great to be with you today. As we've already mentioned a couple of times, I think we are in week 4 of Advent this week. So we're coming to the end of the Advent season as we look to celebrating Christmas Day with one another, and the birth of Christ together. So we're in week 4 of Advent, and this week's theme is love. So I am going to light all 4 of our Advent candles. I've done this lighting candles a few times over the course of the last month, and every time it makes me nervous, in part because I'm afraid they won't light, but also because it has to do with fire, and fire, you know, it's not to be taken lightly is all I'm saying. But let me light all 4 of our Advent candles. So week 1 was hope. Week 2, one second. Week 2 was peace. Week 3 is joy. I'm not burning myself. Everything's fine. And then week 4 this week is love. So as you know, we've been exploring these themes of Advent over the last few weeks through the lives of those who were directly involved in the biblical account of Christ's birth. And so this week we're looking at love, and as we round out this Advent series together, each member of our core teaching team, so myself and Ethan and Aaron and Amanda, we're going to share just some really brief reflections on how this theme of love is represented in the life of Mary, the mother of Jesus. And I'm going to start here by considering how Mary demonstrated her love for God in her sacrifice. No doubt it was a really thrilling experience to be chosen by God to be the mother of the Messiah, this long-awaited Messiah who had been promised to the Israelite people. And Mary's song that we can read in the first chapter of Luke's Gospel, sometimes it's called the Magnificat, it reveals Mary's posture of celebration. She's rejoicing in the truth of God's fulfilled promise to the Israelites. And she rejoices too in this coming of a new world order, this kind of upside down kingdom that is being inaugurated. You can read in Luke chapter 1, Mary's song, like we said, and in verse 51 it starts, these are her words: "He scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He's brought down the mighty from their thrones and exalted those of humble estate. He has filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he has sent away empty." These are significant words from Mary, and all of it would have been thrilling to her, no doubt. She celebrated all of this in the words of her song here. But still, Mary's was a life of incredible sacrifice. She determined from the very beginning, when she first heard these words from the angel Gabriel, that was life-changing for her in so many different ways. She determined from the beginning that she would fully surrender, that she would be fully obedient to this unfolding narrative in her own life and for the world. And this took a lot of sacrifice. She had to constantly find the balance between being the mother of a growing child, fulfilling her role as a mother in an ancient Near Eastern culture that expected mothers to sort of impart wisdom, to socialize and educate their offspring. She had to find the balance between fulfilling this role that was expected of her and yet understanding that her child was the Christ child. She had to strive to see her mothering role in light of this truth. So we might think of a couple of different times in the life of Christ from the biblical account. The time in the temple when Jesus was about 12 years old. Mary and Joseph had been in Jerusalem with Jesus for the annual festival of the Passover, and when it was over, they left Jerusalem with a large group that was traveling with them. And it took them a little bit, but they realized that Jesus was not with them as they left Jerusalem, so they turn around and they go back and they look for him, and it takes them about 3 days to figure out where Jesus was, and they find them, as I'm sure many of us know, among the teachers in the temple. Mary and Joseph were tired and anxious and probably embarrassed as parents, and they say to Jesus essentially, "Why did you do this to us?" And Jesus simply says, "Well, why were you searching? Didn't you know that I'd be in my Father's house?" That's hard. That's hard as a parent to try and figure out what it looks like to hold all of those things in balance, hold it in tension. No doubt Mary and Joseph too wrestled with that. Another time later on in Christ's ministry, when Jesus is teaching in front of a crowd, Mary and his brothers, they come and they want to see him, they want to interact with Jesus, and his disciples pass this on to Jesus and say, they're here to see you. But Jesus' response is not to go to Mary and his brothers, but instead to teach the crowd that all who do the will of the Father are his brother and sister and mother. That's hard to grapple with. When you're the mother, you're the mom, you want to see your son. It's hard to grapple with your role as a mother in the midst of these universal truths. Maybe the most striking account of Mary's sacrifice is when we picture her at the foot of the cross, bearing witness to this horrific execution of her son, remaining faithful up until the very end. And we're told in the account of the crucifixion that when he's close to death, Jesus looks to the disciple who's called the one that he loves, the disciple John. And Jesus says to Mary, his mother, "Women, behold your son," and to John, "Behold your mother." Can you imagine the sacrifice involved in receiving this intimate care, receiving this tenderness from your son in the midst of his own deep pain, his own deep anguish? It's a powerful thing, but it took sacrifice. Mary demonstrated her love for God in her steadfast willingness to live sacrificially. whatever the cost. And this is one way that we see love demonstrated in her life. Ethan, over to you, sir.
One of the things that strikes me about this season, and particularly Luke, just some of the word choice that Luke picks. We've got in Luke chapter 2, I just keep coming back to this description of what Mary is up to. I mean, yeah, you talk about her upbringing and bringing up Jesus. What a remarkable thing. Imagine all the weird, remarkable things that happened around the time of Jesus' birth. Can't find a place to stay, and they're in a stable, and you give birth there, and all of a sudden these like dudes come huffing up saying, "Hey, we just saw some angels. Like, is that cool if we hang out with you guys?" Like, I wonder how restful that night was for a new mom. But and I think all of that. I think I would have been frantic or anxious or just feeling overwhelmed or like peopled out. But Luke describes Mary this way in chapter 2, verse 19. But Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. And and the people around here, he describes them marveling, another word that Luke picks. But this idea that Mary treasured up all these things in her heart is to put to mind, to pay attention to, and then to ponder them in her heart. It's in the active present participle form in the Greek, and it's kind of this ongoing sense. And I want to live that way. And I know that sounds lofty and challenging. But the idea that we can treasure these things and ponder them in our heart, I'll put it this way. She's paying attention to God around her, and she sees God at work around her. And I think there's a word that we use for this called contemplative spirituality, where we're really trying to live in a way that pays attention to what God is doing. And I want to go into this season, but really every season, this coming year ahead of us, as well as every year, in a way that really we take stock of what God is doing, that we treasure in our heart, that we ponder. I think God is at work all around us, maybe not quite as ostensibly at times as angels talking to shepherds and shepherds saying, "Hey, dude, we just saw some angels. They just kind of sang at us and we came over," or an immaculate birth or something like that, immaculate conception. But the idea that what would our lives be like if we lived this way, where we treasured and pondered what God was doing? And I don't know, maybe that's a New Year's resolution of mine, a contemplative approach to a year where we're trying to treasure up and ponder what God is up to. What if we lived awake to God's presence? I think the Bible authors invite us not just to see the period unfolding before them as a time where God was particularly active, but they really do invite us to see every day as such. So let's aspire to that. Let's learn from the nativity story here as we look at Mary and see her pondering and treasuring in her heart. Let's stay awake to God's activity in our lives, and aspire to do that every day.
So yeah, we're talking about the sacrifice of Mary. We're talking about kind of the quality of Mary's presence, her wholeheartedness in this story. And I want to talk for a little bit about just Mary's obedience. And when I think about the obedience of Mary and what it meant for her to say yes to this task God had given her, yes, even just to motherhood in that day and age, was a risky prospect. I mean, high maternal mortality rates. Obviously, she'd be raising a child in a somewhat unstable context, a colonized context with Roman oppression, meaning there's not as many resources, not the ideal situation in which to be raising a child. But still, for women in that culture, in that time, motherhood was something that they generally aspired to. It was considered a woman's greatest role, I guess, to marry and birth children and to serve her husband. But I think for Mary, it's important for us to remember that this journey of motherhood came all out of order for her, of what was expected. So the societal expectation would be that she would get engaged, then she would be formally married, and then she would have a baby. This script would be what she had been groomed for her whole life as a good Jewish girl in that context. And I think sometimes we just fly past the shame and the stigma that Mary would have faced and experienced as like, maybe a mere inconvenience or a passing heartache. But to be found to be pregnant before marriage in that culture would constitute potentially a call to be stoned. It absolutely meant that whispers and suspicion and marginalization would follow her for her entire life. And we even get a clue about this in Mark chapter 6, verse 2. Jesus goes back to his hometown and he's preaching with authority, and people are kind of grumbling about him and saying, isn't this guy just that carpenter that we knew? Isn't he just the son of Mary? And in that culture, you would never refer to a man as a son of his mother. You would always be referred to as the son of his father. He should have been called the son of Joseph. But what this tells you is that people still thought of him as an illegitimate child. They still thought of Mary as this maybe unclean or unholy woman who had birthed this child out of wedlock. This story was following them all those years later. Mary's narrative, the story she expected, was interrupted. Her vision of what she thought her life should look like, her dreams for her future, were interrupted by this call. She was given a task she didn't ask for, didn't plan on carrying, and she said yes. And remember, she said yes before she even knew whether or not Joseph would be the upstanding man that he was. She said yes before she knew whether or not he would continue to care for her and provide for her. What incredible faith. What incredible submission to the call of Christ. And I wonder sometimes how many of us have our stories interrupted. The script makes a plot twist that we never saw coming. We're asked to carry something we didn't sign up for. And this can happen in small ways every single day. Our plans are interrupted by sickness or family drama or bad weather, but it can happen in some really significant and profound ways too. A diagnosis that you have to live with for years to come, a family responsibility, a ministry responsibility that God seems to hand to you that you didn't pursue and you didn't plan on. A child is born with special needs, a parent needs care sooner than you expected, and your best laid plans fall by the wayside. So the question I've been asking myself as I've been reflecting on this is, when those responsibilities come up, when the path takes a divine but difficult turn, do I say yes? Do I show up? Do I say, as Mary did, behold, I am the Lord's bondservant, may it be done to me according to your word? So what is the labor of love God is asking you to carry today? And when you say yes, does your yes come with, openness and softness and tenderness? Or do you become crusted over with cynicism and resentment like we often do when life doesn't go how we expect? Or do you maintain that wholeheartedness that Ethan just spoke of? Are you fully present? Do you stay fully present in the calling, fully attentive and softened towards it? That's, for me, the challenge of Mary's obedience.
Yeah, so for me, looking at Mary's relationship to Jesus and her love for God, in her steadfastness, her faith, and her endurance, to bear up this child who is God. Looking at the kind of the story arc of her life, things do not happen in a very traditional way. I mean, I would imagine that most people were kind of born and lived and died in their hometown and were surrounded by family and extended family, and were able to raise children communally. And her story did not start that way. Her story started with an order, a decree for everyone to return to their hometown. And so Joseph and Mary go to Bethlehem. to a place that's very much unlike where they grew up. They grew up near the lake in Galilee in a little town called Nazareth, and now they're being asked to go to Bethlehem of Judea. Quite a journey to get there, and then during the course of that journey, having to stop and give birth to God. Unbelievable. And her steadfastness and her faith to honor God and honor her husband and honor even a decree that doesn't sound like it's something that she would want to follow. This is a decree, a law of the land, but through faithfulness and steadfastness and with endurance, she goes and she has the baby. And then 8 days later, he's going through the rite of circumcision and presented at the temple. These are not places that she would want to do this in her natural framework, but this is something that she was obedient in and steadfast in. Mm-hmm. And then only to be told that your hometown's no longer safe, and now you have to take this child to a foreign country and to flee across borders and to live there until God said otherwise. The steadfastness and the faith and the endurance it takes to do that. And then with all of that uncertainty, to finally have the Word of God come to them through an angel and tell them it's time to go back. And as they're going back, they thought they might go to the big city of Jerusalem, but that's not the plan that was there for them. So they went back to their hometown of Nazareth in Galilee, and that's where they raised Jesus, and then yearly took their pilgrimage to Jerusalem, and all of the different things that happened. I can only imagine what a mother's thought might be as soon as Joseph said, "Hey, I thought Jesus was with you," and she said, "No, Jesus was supposed to be with you, traveling with the guys," and he said, "No, he's not with me," and to think that they're probably 2 days away from Jerusalem whenever you find out your child is missing, that's got to be a scary feeling. I know misplacing a child in Lowe's or Home Depot is scary enough. And we typically don't leave the store without finding our child. So typically. There's no guarantee. But to think of what that must have felt like. But to know in her heart, mothers have this way of knowing. I'm not a mother, so I can't say this for gospel, but mothers have a way of knowing about their child. And to think that, you know what, I think he must be all right. I think he must be all right. But to get back there and to be ready to kind of reading the riot act, and Jesus just reply, "Hey, didn't you know I would be about my Father's work, my Father's business?" And to from that point to have pondered that in her heart, that's interesting. And then moving from there, I mean, we've got the death of Joseph is somewhere between Jesus being lost and entering into ministry. And to imagine that there's this unknown period of time where Joseph is no longer there, and Jesus is the caretaker for his mom and his brothers and the one sister that we know of. To think that she was steadfast and faithful and enduring even in that, even in widowhood, and having to just see those things and face those things, and then Jesus entering into his ministry where he was not always present with his mother, and her having to, in a sense, be re-widowed. Her endurance and her steadfastness and her faithfulness to God, even in that. And then ultimately, just a short 3 years later, to be walking with the crowd along the side of the road, crying and sobbing and being confused about why is it that my son, even though he's done nothing wrong, is being brought to a hill to be crucified. What is going on? But she was steadfast, and she was faithful, and she endured. And like Graham said, even as Jesus is on the cross, in agony, about to give his last breath, he leans to her or looks down to her and says, Mary, behold John, and John, behold your mother. And he, in a sense, gives his mother to his friend as a surrogacy to be the person to provide for his mother, knowing that he would not be there to do that anymore. And her steadfastness and her faithfulness and her endurance through those things. And then to see the resurrection, to see the fulfillment of the word happen, and then to see her son ascend to heaven. Could you imagine the steadfastness and the faithfulness and the endurance?
Thank you, Aaron, and thank you to our core teaching team for sharing those thoughts. There's many lessons that we can learn from the life of Mary in the lane of love for God, but outside of that as well. I guess all of it can be encompassed in that. But there's just so many different lessons we can learn from the life of this faithful woman who allowed herself to be used by God. So it is a great example for us all to follow. For the last few minutes of our teaching time together today, we want to continue on with this theme of love, but invite others in the room here to participate in conversation, as we sometimes do on a Sunday morning as well. So we're gathered here as our leadership team and staff team and teaching team. And so I have a couple of questions that I want to introduce to the group here, just as we think about closing out 2023 and moving into 2024, and like I said, continuing on with this theme of love. So here's my first question for you all to think about a little bit. How have you experienced God's love in 2023 at the heart? It would be great to hear some reflections about our church family life in particular, but also outside of that, in your own family, your own homes, in your community and workspaces. How have you experienced God's love in 2023? And I invite all of you at home or wherever you might be watching and listening from today to join with us in these reflections as well and think about your own response to these questions. But let me throw this out to the group. How have you experienced God's love in 2023 at the heart? I can pass this mic around. Don't be shy.
One of the ways that I've experienced God's love in our church community, every time I come back from a trip and going in and out, I see the community embracing each other, and I see the community embracing those that have been part of the heart for a long time, but also I see the community embracing the new people that are coming into our community. And every time I come, I always notice a new face. And especially when we're ending and we're tearing down and putting the chairs back into the place, cleaning the, putting the tables back, I always see that new person being loved on by our community. And it's just, it encourages my heart well. It shows just the unity that is among the church community, and that's, and that doesn't stay in the heart doors; it's going out, and I think that has been very encouraging for me to watch, and for me, just seeing how our community, we come together and we get a chance to talk about through the notes, the sermon notes, and all of those moments, we get a chance to hear people's stories along in answering those questions. We get to come to when we break out in groups and we get to talk and see that I feel loved in such a way that even though I'm not there a lot because of my work travels, I feel already in it, and I feel that love deeply every time I come when I'm there on Sunday mornings. And I see that be lived out in so many different ways. So that's the ways I've experienced God's love in our church community.
One of the ways that I've seen God's love expressed in our church community is just simply, like Alex said, it's at the end of a service. but it's everyone is there taking time to be with one another, and there doesn't appear to be any like little groups or cliques that are kind of huddled together with one another. It looks like it's just everyone loving on one another and asking how each one's doing, and it's different each time, and it is, grabbing a couple of chairs and grabbing a couple of buddies that also have chairs and hauling those back to the library. It's those things. It feels familiar. It feels like a family, and that's awesome.
I think that the year 2023 for our church, and just hearing all the points that the teachers have made this evening, I think it is important to note that our church is an example of a labor of love to many. As a long time member of the Heart community, I've seen that community kind of ebb and flow and change with people and with programs and with teachers. And specific to 2023, what I've seen is that our church looks a lot different than it did 5-8 years ago when I first joined. And I say that because it is a beautiful thing. It is a beautiful and steadfast and faithful thing that our church is still here. The Heart is still here. It is still my home. It is our home. And that is an example of steadfastness and faithfulness that you mentioned, Aaron. I will always call the Heart home as a result of this. Each of these people in this room, each of you watching, are hand-chosen by God to be a part of this community in the same way that Mary was hand-chosen to give birth to the Son of God. Obviously, that is something that I learned tonight in this very moment, just hearing all these teachers give those different perspectives. But it just made me realize, it just clicked just now, how beautiful and how blessed we are as a church community. And I have been blessed watching that happen this year, sometimes remotely, sometimes in the building. Yeah.
I guess building on some of that idea, I think something that Kyle and I have been really encouraged by is watching our church navigate these changes. And when Mike left, there wasn't this scramble. There was a steadfastness. There was a commitment to this body, to one another. And the courage to say we don't need to look outside of the church for somebody else to come in and lead. We have individuals within this church who can fill that position of leadership and share it. I feel like that's an act of love. It's an act of trust, seeing the Spirit of God here and among us, and empowering the full church to lead one another. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. I was commenting to Kyle the other day that we were in Winston-Salem and we were walking around, and of course whenever we're in a new city we're like, oh, could we ever live here? This is a cool city, whatever. And having been a gypsy all of my life, I stay one place for like 6 months and I'm ready to go to the next one. I made a comment to Kyle that this is like the first time that I've had this thought of like, but I don't know if I can leave Boone, because like there's a community here that like I'm beholden to and they're beholden to me, and that was new. So thanks, y'all.
For me, I think I'm thinking back about, so 2022 was a big year for us with Chloe, our daughter, joining our family late in the year, and we really kind of started getting back to our routines, I think, in the beginning of 2023, and it's been a big year for our family. And I think we just felt a lot of love and support from the people of the Heart, our people that were in our small group in our home community, where they left us a big sign when we came home with Ploy, and welcoming us home, and they were kind of the real connection point for us, and just kind of helping support us. And I think many people around this room and at the Heart have been a really big. They've just really shown a lot of love towards us and towards Ploy. And I also think children's ministry has been a huge piece of that too. It's been amazing to watch her interpretation of what goes on in children's ministry, and from kind of, now I don't really know what we talked about today, to really being able to start telling the stories of Jesus, the stories of Jesus' love for us, and really seeing how she's really learning and growing in her faith through just the many faithful people that are working with the kids ministry, and then I think all the other kids that are in the group too. It's just really nice to be able to have a community for her to grow up and to know Jesus, and to know what to know the love of this community. So it's just been a really special year for us, and I've just really thankful for the community we have here to be able to show some love to us and to deploy as we kind of grow as a family. So.
I'll just quickly add that I love, we're smaller, mid-sized church, and we have our own internal needs and things we'd like to do. And I love how our church continues to pour out into the community. No matter what our needs are internally, there's always a focus and an emphasis on what is our larger community, whether or not you're part of the Heart. How can we represent Christ in Boone and the High Country and beyond? I think it was the World Relief fundraiser we just did, and just the overflow. I think mathematically, statistically, we probably shouldn't have been able to raise that much money, and we did, and just very grateful for that part of our church family.
Yeah, I love that, Amanda, and it's a good segue to the next question that I'll throw out here for us. But before I do that, I just want to celebrate again that fundraiser that we've just come through, because I still have people messaging me throughout this week saying, "Oh, we weren't there Sunday. Can we still give to this effort?" Like, there's people still wanting to go even above and beyond that 10,000, which, like you said, for our side of the church and just in general is a really incredible thing. So thank you again to everyone who's jumped into that. Okay, so a good segue, because the last question I have for us is, how can we move even more into the tangible expression of God's love to those around us as we step into 2024, a new year together, a new ministry year together? How can we step even more fully into loving those around us, whether that is one another at the Heart, within the church family, or in Boone and Watauga County, surrounding counties, or even further out when we think about World Relief and our World Relief Rwanda partnership, all these different pieces, formal and informal. How can we tangibly express God's love to those around us as we think about next year? You're dangerously close to me, Aaron. I might make you go first, because I can just hand the mic off to you.
We can do a hot potato.
Yeah, that's true.
So, how can we tangibly demonstrate God's love?
Yeah, or even like if it simplifies it a little bit, maybe it's even just something that we're looking forward to that might help us do that. It's something that we know is planned, for next year. Anything along that line.
One of the interesting things, what I've always said is, something that's healthy can't help but grow. Mm-hmm. So I think one thing to kind of look forward to into 2024 is, I see the Heart is something that is becoming really healthy, and as a result of that, it's going to grow. But we have to be willing to receive that growth and to foster that same spirit that we are operating in now as things kind of get bigger, and maybe there's some pains there. I think we just need to be ready and prepared like prepare our hearts for that as we go into this next season, to just really embrace those around us and look around our community to those who maybe haven't experienced what they would call God's love in a while, and to really just invite them in and invite them to be a part of what God's doing in just a small representation of His church. And I'm really excited for that. I'm looking forward to it. And I'm not usually the guy that's best suited for change, but I'm ready to embrace the change and to see those things happen. And that's it for me.
I think something we can do this next year with everything going on in the world and just the things that will be happening in our country in the year to come is to make, what are you talking about? If we can maintain our humility and our safety as a church, is to be a place where you can come no matter what your questions are, no matter what you're struggling with, you can have a safe conversation, a safe and a vibrant and a robust conversation about any issue that's troubling you, any question you have about God or this country or the world, that the heart is a safe place for conversation. Safe not in the sense that we don't challenge people towards Christ-likeness. We do that, but we create a safe home for people where we model healthy, vibrant, humble, redemptive conversations about the hardest topics. And I think if we can model that as a church, and that to me is what it means to be a city on a hill right now, and with such a contentious climate around the world and in our country, if we can kind of be that place where we can treat each other with dignity, even where there's differences, to me, that's going to be a really, really powerful resource and a powerful light for our community and for one another. We're so humble.
I've been thinking about, for our household, but then I'd also love to see it within the church, inviting new folks over to lunch on Sundays. I think we're finally at the point as a household where Ada doesn't need, her nap schedule exactly at a particular time. And so we sort of have in the back of our mind that if new folks show up, you might be invited over to our house for lunch. It might be rice and beans, but I feel like embracing that kind of a culture of just having people over into the home, and it's informal and it's just family and we can talk, having those safe conversations at the table is it can be a fruitful place to do that. Anyway, that's what we've been thinking about.
I think one thing that I'm excited about, and Ethan talked about it on Sunday, was, I think this past Sunday, kind of more of a focus too on families and doing the book series together. And I think just, we have a real focus, have had a great focus on children and on our youth. And then I think it's also kind of rounding that out is also just thinking about our families who are raising the children and youth. And I think as a newer parent, I think it's helpful. I'm looking forward to having conversations with other parents just about how to create the household environment that's loving and that's growing kids in faith, but then also just like real struggles that we all deal with of just being human beings, of surviving. Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to just more conversations as family and thinking of it as a family ministry as well as kind of our kids and youth. So really excited about those conversations.
Really rich thoughts. I don't want to cut anybody off. If there's any last thoughts or things you're looking forward to in 2024, just in general, as we think about just experiencing God's love with one another. Pretty good. Yeah, really really rich conversation. I love that we kind of ended up there with our families. That certainly seems to be a lot of who God is drawing into the life of the Heart. We're excited about that, excited about every demographic that's represented at the Heart. It's a really, you were speaking, Emily, a little bit to some of the health of the Heart right now, and I think, Ray, you did as well. And to me, a big part of that is this intergenerational piece that's coming together. It is our families, it is our children, and that was in my head with the first question of how we're experiencing the love of God. I've experienced God's love through our kids, my own kids, absolutely, but through all of our kids and their laughter and their joy and their inquisitive nature and all of that. I was thinking as you were sharing, Matt, that I sat with Ploy, I think at one of our family gatherings that we had at the Three Forks Baptist Association building, and I sat and just shot the breeze with Ploy for about 10 minutes, and it was awesome. It was awesome, and she was asking me questions, and I was asking her questions, and yeah, really experiencing the love of God through our kids. So yeah, we have families, and I'm excited about that, but God's bringing all kinds of people across the generations, across different demographics, and that to me is a real marker of health as well, and so we celebrate that in a lot of different ways. So a lot is before us as we look to 2024. The word that is in my head, just as we share different thoughts about how we want to tangibly express God's love, the word that's in my head is attentiveness. Maybe presence is an even better word. I think our world and we ourselves, we desperately need presence. We need the presence of God, and we need the presence of one another to navigate the complexities of life, to navigate the complexities of all that's coming at us in 2024, all that's going on globally. We need to be present to one another. We need to be attentive to how the Spirit is at work in one another and through one another. And so I'm excited to try and offer that to others and to receive that from others within our church family and much broader in our community as well. If there's something significant, something powerful about simply sitting across the table from someone and being fully attentive to who they are and what they're bringing into that space. It sounds like a simple thing, and in some ways it maybe is, but it's so rare these days that when you offer it, people are kind of floored by it. So even just in that simple way of, can I commit to being present with someone when they're across the table from me in 2024, I think would go a long way in terms of helping to be the expression of God's love. So thank you all for your participation in that conversation and for all that you do within the life of the Heart to bring about these realities that we're all speaking to. I'm grateful, and I know our whole church family is. We're going to close out our time together today with a little bit more worship and song. So Amanda, I'll hand over to you.
So we're going to sing a song that is traditional to sing at the close of a year. And I've learned that the song was written about friendship, and that's what I see when I look around this room. When I think of who's watching this morning, I think of deep, deep friendship and community. So we'll sing that song, and then we'll close with our benediction song, as we always do.